I didn't notice the change in my daughter at first. It crept in quietly, like damp sneaking under a door frame after a long rain. She came back in late October, a suitcase and a tight smile, saying it would be just for a while. I told her the house missed her laugh. She hugged me with one arm and kept the other on her phone, already holding herself somewhere else. The first night she rearranged the kitchen, said my system was messy. She slid the knives into a new drawer, pushed the cinnamon to the back, lined the plates by size as if we ran a diner. I let her. It felt good at first to be fussed over, to feel young energy moving through rooms that had gone still after the divorce. The house made sound again. Cabinet doors, feet on stairs, the back door squealing when the dog slipped out and in. I thought that meant life was returning. By morning, a note waited on the fridge in her sharp print. No more canned soup. Fresh only. She added a tiny heart, but it felt like a period. I laughed anyway, then tucked my can opener into the junk drawer and pretended not to hear the click it made, like a scolded tongue. Her small rules softened into larger ones. She took my keys, so you don't lose them, and answered my phone while I was in the bath, telling friends I was resting, telling my sister I'd call later, telling the contractor we weren't doing porch repairs until spring. As if she owned winter and I needed permission to step into it. At dinner she asked what I had done all day, and I joked about mailing a package. "That's not a plan," she said. "Mum, you need structure." She poured olive oil into the skillet, the gold ribboning around her wrist. She moved with the same certainty she had on softball fields in high school. My heart lurched. I had missed her. I told myself this was love wearing a new costume. The freezer began to hum. Not the old friendly thrum, but a mechanical growl that bled under doors. We bought that chest unit the year after she was born. It sat in the mudroom like a quiet friend, full of casseroles for nights when we were too tired to pretend to be perfect. Lately, the hum had an edge. Maybe grief can tune appliances. Behind the flour, I found a pickle jar with rubber-banded cash. It wasn't mine. Lila said she was saving. "For what?" I asked. "For us," she said, eyes on the cutting board. I offered my bank. She said banks are nosy. I said thieves are nosier. She laughed without teeth. Evenings became a study in weather. If she came home quiet, I turned on the bright lamp and made tea. If she came home with music in her earbuds, I made space. Sometimes she hugged me without speaking, and the old ache rose, the one that says you missed a warning when she was little, a light you should have seen. I held her like a secret I wanted to keep, and pretended not to feel her shoulders tremble once, then steady. The neighbour, Mr. Carver, started waving again. He timed his yard work for Tuesdays when I took the trash out. "That hum could mean a failing compressor," he said, nodding at the mudroom. I said we'd look into it. We felt heavy on my tongue. "If you need a hand," he offered. His mouth held a kind smile, the kind that makes you feel you left a window open. Lila pressed 2 fingers into my elbow when I came inside. "Please don't chat about our appliances," she said. "People pry." I told her he was being nice. Nice people have motives. "So do unkind ones," I said. Her eyes flashed, then softened. "I'm trying to keep you safe," she said, placing the words between us. At 3 a.m. I woke to the back door. I padded down the hall and stood behind the mudroom wall, watching a blade of light under the door. The hum pitched higher, like a throat clearing. Through the window I saw her in my old blue robe, the one with frayed cuffs, standing with the lid open. Frost breathed out. She was counting. Not money, something in Ziplocs, black marker sliding across plastic. She smoothed a fingertip over one bag before tucking it deeper. My chest went cold, the kind that starts in your teeth. I meant to speak but stayed frozen. Frozen as the peas I bought on sale last fall when everything felt stable for a week. She closed the lid slowly, like a goodbye, and clicked a padlock I didn't know we owned. We had never locked it. Morning brought sunny eggs and a new schedule, wake by 7, walk at 8, coffee only after stretching. Read an hour, but not sad stuff. I tried to rebel by making instant oatmeal at 3 in the afternoon. She poured it out. "Sugar at 3 makes you spike at 9, she said, rinsing the bowl while I stood like a scolded child. I told myself to pick my battles. I told myself control was love wearing a safety vest, waving a bright flag. Then she brought home banker's boxes, cheap cardboard, pretend strong. She labelled in her precise hand, winter clothes, papers, keepsakes. She set one in front of me. Let's get organised. We were always invited to her plans like guests who never RSVP'd. I lifted a photo of her at 4, mouth open in a laugh so pure it hurt. I started to cry, not the pretty kind. She glanced at the clock. 15 minutes, she said softly, as if mercy ran on a timer. In a folder, I found my mother's last letter, telling me to forgive myself for not being enough. I slipped it into my pocket. Lila noticed. "What's that?" "Mine," I said. She held out her hand. I didn't give it. "No secrets," she said. I echoed the phrase too quickly, and her face changed, subtle, like a cloud sliding over a thin moon. She smiled, lifted the box, and said she'd take the heavy things downstairs. The basement door sighed open. I listened to her boots on the steps. The sound faded, then rose, then stopped. The house went still in a way that felt like thinking. I pressed my palm flat on the table until the grain marked my skin. When she came back, she was breathless in a way that didn't match the weight. She kissed my forehead. "You're doing great," she said. "We're almost there." Almost where, I didn't ask. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. That night, after she fell asleep with the television painting her face blue, I crept to the mudroom. The padlock sat fat on the freezer. I touched it with 2 fingers. It felt warm, which scared me more than cold. I tried numbers. Her birthday, my wedding day, the day my mother died. None clicked. The hum rose, and for a second it sounded like a word. It sounded like wait. I don't know what I expect inside. I tell myself it's food prep. I tell myself she's saving because she worries I'll forget to eat. I tell myself she loves me in a language I haven't learned. The house knows better. It creaks in corners, warning like a friend with bad news. I think of nights I stood at her door, listening for breath, how motherhood trains you to be a spy in your own home. Tomorrow I'll ask her to unlock it. I'll say the words gently, as if approaching a wild animal. I'll keep my hands visible. She will smile and say, "Of course, Mum," or she won't. Either way, I'm tired of being kept safe like a thing that breaks at room temperature. Either way, I have a right to know what hums for me in the dark. Tonight, the house holds its breath. I set a chair by the mudroom door and wait for the hinge cry of morning. Love can be gentle. It can also be a lock with my name. Morning made me brave in the way coffee sometimes does. Thin courage, but warm. I found her at the stove, coaxing a poached egg to behave. The padlock key glittered on a chain at her throat, tucked mostly under her shirt like a thought she didn't want to share. "Unlock it," I said, trying to sound like I had always owned my voice. Steam filmed her lashes. She slipped the egg onto toast, dusted pepper, and slid the plate toward me. "Eat first," she said. The key flashed when she moved, a small sun tracing her collarbone. I pushed the plate back. "Now," I said, the words scraping. She smiled, but it didn't reach the part of her that remembered lemonade stands and scraped knees. "You'll feel better after protein," she said. "I'll feel better after answers," I said, and the room went very quiet except for the hum that lived in the next room like a secret pet. Her eyes cut to the mudroom, quick as a cat. She sighed, like I had put a weight in her hands. "You're fixated because Mr. Carver said something," she said. "He notices you." The way she said notices made it sound like watched. "People are kind," I said. "People collect," she countered. I stood. The chair legs gritted the floor, the sound of a line being drawn. "Open it!" The key rose and fell on her breath. She pinched it, then let it drop, as if testing me. "Will you promise not to overreact?" she asked. "I'll—" "Promise not to pretend," I said. She searched my face, then the clock, like time could referee. "Fine," she said, and the word was both a gift and a dare. We walked to the mudroom. The padlock looked smug. My hands shook and I hid them in my robe pockets. She fit the key. It turned with a soft, greedy snick. Frost smoke rolled when she lifted the lid. The hum deepened, like a throat clearing before confession. I leaned in and saw plastic, neat rows of Ziplocs, skins slicked with ice. No meat, no casseroles, not even blueberries. Paper, keys, phone chargers coiled like waiting snakes, labels in her hand. Spares. Tax docs, Dad's watch, Mom meds, am only. The air bit my face. She reached for a bag. Inside, envelopes, their corners blunted by cold. "I'm preserving the important things," she said calmly, "so time can't ruin them." She touched another. Deeds, insurance. The freezer light made the black marker glow. My mouth went dry. "Paper belongs in a file," I said. "Freezing slows decay," she said, like a science teacher. "Moisture is the enemy. We stop moisture, we stop mould, we stop loss." Her logic was tidy as her drawers, but it moved like a river after a dam. Too forceful, too certain. "How long?" I asked. She tucked one bag deeper, sealing it in cold like a ceremony. "A while," she said, "since after that fall you had." The fall where I bruised a rib and lay on the kitchen floor laughing, crying at the ceiling, because pain sometimes makes fools honest. "You scared me," she said softly. "I needed to make sure everything stayed where I put it." I wanted to hold the tenderness of that line. I also wanted to shake it until the fear fell out. "My passport?" I asked. She nodded toward a corner. "Lower left. It's safe." Safe wore bars. I reached in and cold knifed my wrist. I fished out a bag labelled letters. My mother's looping script ghosted through the plastic, a blue river under frost. My throat closed. "You put her voice on ice," I whispered. "I kept it from drowning," she whispered back. I could hear the girl in her for a second, the one who used to sleep with library books under her pillow like talismans. "This isn't normal," I said. The word normal felt flimsy, like a porch chair in a storm. "Normal is how we lost things," she said. "Normal is how Dad left bills in drawers, and we found them after the power cut, and the fridge died, and the milk smelled like a dare." Her face softened and hardened at once. "I'm building a museum that can breathe cold." She smiled then, awful and beautiful. "It's working." We stood shoulder to shoulder over the icy archive. Some bags held my morning pills, sorted into days, each zipped like a promise. Some held my keys, duplicates shaved down and labelled trust. I don't know if she meant hers or mine. In the far corner, something dark, fabric, pressed against. Plastic. She moved to block it without moving at all. "What's that?" I asked. "Winter scarves," she said too quickly. I slid a hand toward it. Her fingers caught my wrist, gentle but firm, like a nurse drawing blood. "Mum, please." That please opened a small window. Beyond it, wind. I took my hand back. The hum levelled, pleased. "Close it," I said. She did, and when the lid latched, the air seemed to thicken, like the room exhaled into a scarf. She turned the key, fed the padlock, and smiled as if we'd completed a daily chore. "Progress," she said. "We did not progress," I said. "We toured a crime scene with paperwork." Her nostrils flared. "Don't be dramatic," she said. The word stung. Me, told not to be dramatic by the girl who froze time. The day slid around us in tasks. She set me to sorting spices by heat. She ran laundry and accused the dryer of lying about lint. Each order she gave was dipped in concern, then lacquered. When I drifted toward the window, she drifted too, positioning herself between me and the glass like a moving eclipse. "Let's read," she suggested. "I'll pick." She chose a memoir about resilience and underlined with a ruler. "Chapter 3 is your chapter," she said, "the part where the mother decides." By afternoon I had to get outside. I told her I needed air. "Open the back door," she said, "and I'll stand here while you breathe." I laughed, a sound that felt too loud for my throat. "I'm going 2 houses down," I said, "to ask Mr. Carver about compressors." Her jaw flexed, small muscle telling a bigger story. "He will meddle," she said. "I will talk," I said. I put on my coat. She didn't move. 10 minutes, she said. She held up 10 fingers like a referee. "I'm a grown woman," I said, and hated the waiver at the end. "Exactly," she said softly, "and grown women drown quietly." Outside, the air was a cold hand on my chest. Mr. Carver was trimming brown from his hydrangeas, humming something church simple. He looked up, and his face rearranged into relief. "You okay?" he asked, the casual kind that carries a rope. "Our freezer is loud," I said. "She thinks it's fine." He set his shears down. "You want me to take a look?" he asked. "I have a multimeter." Words like multimeter make me feel both safe and small. "Come tomorrow," I said, "when she's at yoga." He nodded, then hesitated. "Saw her bring in boxes," he added gently. "You moving?" The question hooked something in me. "I don't know," I said. The truth fell out like a marble and rolled somewhere I couldn't see. Back inside, she was at the table with a composition notebook open, numbers marching in ink. She had drawn grids, columns labelled time, task, energies, loss prevention. She looked up, smiled too fast. "Want to try the schedule again?" she asked brightly. I glanced at the page. In the margin she'd written, "Freezer inventory next, night." My stomach went tight. To her, the night was a workshop. To me, it was a tide. At dusk, the power flickered in a quick shiver. The hum hiccuped, then returned, smugger. She stood, already moving toward the fuse box with the focus of someone who sees storms as tests. I followed, quieter than I meant to be, and caught her touching the freezer lid like a promise. When the light settled, she tapped the padlock twice, a superstitious little drum. She noticed me and laughed. "Just checking the seal," she said. "Cold is money." I thought of the cash in the pickle jar and wondered how much language we'd lost. That night, I waited for her bedtime to pull me into safety, the way it did when she was 10 and sleep turned her fierce edges to silk. She fell asleep in the chair, TV murmuring. The keychain slid down to the hollow of her throat. I stared at it until my eyes watered. If I took it, if I opened the box, if I saw every word she had put on ice, could I warm us? Or would I set off an alarm only she could hear? At 3, the back door whispered. Once again the blade of light under the mudroom door. I moved more boldly this time, anger pinning fear to the wall like a moth. The lid lifted, cold light on her face, making her look both older and very young. She pulled out the dark bag I'd noticed, a zip stuffed with fabric. I leaned and saw not scarves but clothes, tiny as truth. Baby clothes, a onesie with embroidered lemons, socks the size of a thumb. My hand went to my mouth, covering nothing. She stroked the fabric like a cat. "You were going to be a sister," she breathed, so faint I almost missed it. The words dropped through the floor. I stepped into the light. Her head snapped up, eyes wide as if the freezer had spoken. We stared, mother and daughter, and cold. "Whose?" I asked, though I knew the answer because grief has a smell and it was blowing off her like freezer burn. She swallowed. "Mine," she said. The night made a small bell in her throat. Not anymore. I thought of the hum, newly edged, the boxes, the rules with hearts on the notes. I thought of the way she stood over me to make sure I breathed. I thought, she is holding everything that could slip. Paper, pills, time, a lemon yellow onesie, and freezing it because nothing else worked. The room tilted. My body found a chair. She waited, hands pressed flat on the cold rim, like a person steadying a ship. "Why didn't you?" I started, but the question broke like thin glass. She closed the bag and tucked it deep. Because you would tell me to let go, she said, and I can't, not yet. She closed the lid, fed the lock, and leaned her forehead on the white metal until her breath fogged. Then she turned, her face both mine and not. Tomorrow, she said, we'll do it together, all of it. We'll catalogue and we'll decide what can thaw. The promise sounded like a truce, offered by a flood. I nodded because I could not speak without drowning, and because in the cross-current of terror and tenderness I heard a small word rise, the one mothers whisper to babies and to themselves, "Stay." Morning came like a verdict, flat and bright, and I woke with the taste of cold on my tongue. Lila was already up, grinding coffee like it owed her rent. The key lay against her throat, a small weight that moved when she breathed. I watched it and thought of the lemon onesie, the way her voice had thinned when she said not anymore. Loss hangs in a house like an extra curtain, soft, but it keeps out light. "We start after breakfast," she said, cheerful in the way of someone trying to outrun a wave. I nodded. My hands had that tremble that doesn't show unless you pour milk. I poured carefully, pretending steadiness into being. "We'll go slow," I said. "We'll go right," she corrected. I swallowed the argument. Love is sometimes agreeing to her adverbs. She had made a list, of course she had. Categories, subcategories, tiny squares to mark progress. Medical, legal, sentimental, hazard. The last made me laugh. She didn't. "Some things cut you on the way out," she said. We stood in the mudroom like surgeons scrubbing in. The padlock clicked, the lid lifted, and our breath turned into ghosts. Ziplocks shone like tiles in a church. "We'll catalogue first," she said, handing me a notebook. "Then thaw, then decisions." I traced the ruled line like a lifeline. "And if we disagree?" I asked. "We won't," she said too quickly. We started with medical. Pill organisers, prescriptions, notes in her tidy print, doses, side effects, reminders to call Dr. Ames if Mum's laugh shrinks. I felt my face heat in the cold. "I laugh," I said, too defensive. "You do," she said, and smiled with her eyes this time. "I just want to hear it for a long time." We slid to legal, deeds, insurance, my will, which I hadn't read since I still believed marriage was a language I spoke. One envelope had my name, then, open with Lila, in my mother's hand from years before her hands shook. I stared, felt the old ache rise like a tide. "Later," I said. "Together," she agreed. We put it aside. Sentimental bled into hazard with a speed that made me dizzy. Baby clothes, sonograms, a lock of hair tied with thread. Hers, the colour of wheat in the kind of summer we don't get anymore. And then a bag that wasn't hers. A small spiral notebook, red cover, the kind gas stations keep by lighters. I recognised the blocky handwriting on the first page like a slap. "He left notes?" I whispered. My ex-husband had been a man of receipts, not words. Lila's mouth tightened. "I found it in the garage behind his tackle box," she said. "After?" After meant after he left us with bills and a silence that buzzed like a fluorescent light. I risked opening it. Inside, schedules and names, a currency of errands written like debts. Near the back, a single sentence underlined twice. "Don't let her handle the money." My chest went hollow. "He meant me," I said. "He meant control," she said. Her eyes were flint. "We're breaking inheritance patterns today?" We worked until noon made itself known through the window. Weak sun, strong wind combing the birch. The freezer hummed steady, but now I heard it like a metronome to grief. We didn't touch the lemon onesie. It sat in its cold corner like a small sun we weren't ready to look at. I watched Lila watching it. This is the part of mothering no book tells you. Sometimes the bravest thing you do is not touch what is killing you both. "Water," I said, and we took a break, sitting on the steps like teenagers after a swim. "Was there someone?" I asked softly. The key glittered as she breathed. She stared at a knot in the wood like she could read fate there. He wasn't cruel, she said. He was kind in pieces, like you get a good minute and then the minute ends. I waited. When it happened, he said we'd try again, she added, voice flat like a hospital light. And then he put the onesie in a bag and said we should keep busy. I kept this. He kept leaving. She looked at me, and the girl I used to tuck in blinked from behind the woman. I thought if I could keep everything else from moving, I wouldn't lose the rest. Her hand drifted to the key, a habit without permission. I know it doesn't make sense written down. It makes sense inside a body, I said. We sat with that, the way pain sometimes sits beside you, and for a minute behaves. At one, Mr. Carver knocked, polite knuckles on old wood. We both flinched. Lila's shoulders squared. I invited him, I said quickly, to check the noise. Her lips pressed together like a wound closing. Fine, she said, then added, you stay with us. She meant, don't leave me with him, and maybe she also meant, don't leave me. I opened the door. He stood there with a multimeter and a smile that tried hard to look casual. It was the kind of smile men wear at neighbours' funerals. Afternoon, he said, if I'm interrupting. You are, Lila said, but you can come in. He stepped inside carefully, like the floor might judge him. Just want to listen, he said, nodding toward the mudroom. Hum's different from last spring. He put prongs to outlets, ear to metal, hand flat on the lid. Compressor's working harder than it should, he said, finally. Seal's tight, might be overstuffed. Lila's chin lifted at the word. It's organised, she said. I'm sure it is, he said smoothly. Organised and full can be two truths. He looked at me. Could help you move some paper to dry boxes. Freezer's not a library. He meant well. He meant too much. Lila stepped, between him and the lid, not aggressive, just sure. We've got it, she said. He nodded and took a half step back. Offer stands, he murmured to me. Thank you, I said, hearing the tiny betrayal in my own gratitude. After he left, the air felt bruised. Lila swung the door shut with more force than the hinges deserved. He thinks we're ridiculous, she said. He thinks we're human, I said. Same thing. She went quiet in the way that means noise is coming later. Let's finish legal, she said. And we did, in an obedient silence that reminded me of church after the sermon when everyone is waiting to be dismissed. By late afternoon, the notebook had more check marks than blanks. We'd moved a cautious bundle of envelopes into a box lined with zip bags. For thawing, Lila said, room temperature like butter. The smallest smile. I watched her hands, the competence, the control, the way they smoothed corners, coaxed order from mess like a magician pulling thread from a knot. Those hands used to reach for mine at crosswalks. I used to be the one who said, now, and she would step because I had measured the cars and the light and the risk. This is the part where motherhood reverses its current. You feel it the day your child's hand becomes the one that steadies. It warms and it burns. At dusk, I said the thing I'd been swallowing. We should thaw the onesie. The words felt like walking barefoot across cold tile. Lila's shoulders rose, fell. She nodded even though everything in her said no. She lifted the bag out with the care of a person handling a live wire. We sat at the table with a towel between us, the plastic sweating, the yellow lemons bright as if summer had climbed into the room. We didn't talk. The clock did. The hum did. The freezer felt like it was listening. When the bag softened, she opened it, and the smell, faint detergent, a ghost of sunshine, slid out and sat in my lap. She didn't cry. Neither did I. The tears were there, but they were disciplined, like soldiers at inspection. She pressed the fabric to her cheek. I bought it at a consignment shop in June, she said quietly. I thought it felt like luck to find lemons in a city that keeps failing at being warm. She laughed once, short, a sound like something escaping by mistake. I kept it in the car for a week before I brought it inside, like the universe needed time to adjust. Do you want to keep it in a drawer? I asked. Or a shadow box? Something warm? She traced a lemon with her nail. If it's warm, it will smell like dust someday, she said. If it's cold, it stays like this. If it's cold, it stays like this, I repeated, and the sentence split in my mouth, one half wise, one half warning. We folded it together, the way you fold flags at the end of ceremonies. We put it back in the bag, but not back in the freezer. We set it on the shelf by the window where the last light touched it and made the lemons wink like a small, stubborn joy. We were so careful with that small thing that we almost missed the bigger one. In the bottom of the freezer, under tax docs, under spares, under mom meds only, a bag had split. Water, microscopic but patient, had invaded. The ink on a bundle of old checks bled. Not much, just enough to make the names look like they were moving. Lila saw it first and went very still. It's strange the way panic can look like stillness. I'll fix it, she said, voice perfectly calm. She tried to reseal, to press, to smooth. The freezer hummed louder, then lower, like a warning siren losing power. We can scan, I said. We can make copies. She shook her head, tiny, like she was denying a sneeze. The original matters, she said, the ink your hand made, the pressure of Dad's writing, the grooves. Her fingers whitened. If the first thing dies, what are we even keeping? She was breathing faster. We can't keep everything, I said, too soft for the size of the truth. We can't keep everything, she repeated, but in her mouth it sounded like betrayal. The power flickered again, a quick blackout that made the whole house gasp. In the dark, the freezer's hum dropped out. We stood in a new silence, both of us animals hearing a predator's foot. The light snapped back. The hum returned, weaker. Lila looked at me and I saw it, the edge she had been walking. If it dies, she said, I die. It wasn't drama. It was a declaration from a cliff. I reached for her, but before I could say whatever mothers say to turn cliffs into hills, the back door knocked without a hand. Wind or fate. The lemon onesie lifted at the corner in the draft and settled again like a breath. The outage lasted 3 seconds, but the panic kept going. It ran laps inside my ribs, a runner I couldn't trip. Lila's eyes anchored to the lid like she could will the compressor stronger with a look. We need backup, she said, already moving. She dragged an extension cord from the hall closet, wound like a bright orange snake, and plugged it into an outlet she trusted more. Same circuit, I said gently. We should call an electrician. We should call no one, she snapped, then softened so quickly I could hear the hinge squeak. I mean, later. We stabilise first. She opened the freezer and a cold fog poured out. She leaned into it the way a person leans into a prayer. Rotate the bags, she said. Coldest to the centre, anything damp comes out to air. She handed me tax docs and I felt the faintest leak, a chill that licked my palm. Towels, I said. I brought dish towels, then old bath ones, then a faded beach towel with cartoon whales that turned ridiculous and holy at the same time. We lined the table. The lemon onesie watched from the window shelf, small, bright, unthawed. As we worked, the house responded like a living thing. The radiator clinked awake, the refrigerator in the kitchen cleared its throat, the attic cracked in a way that said temperature. The freezer hum steadied, thin but present. We're okay, I said, and heard the wish inside the statement. Lila started cataloguing again, fierce and gentle, the way she used to cut paper snowflakes, fast hands, precise intent. You should rest between categories, I said. We can't slow. Heat wins, she said. Heat always wins. Her voice made heat sound like grief with a different costume. We reached the bottom layer. That's where she'd hidden the hard things, as if depth were safety. Hazard, one bag read, but inside was not a blade, just a stack of photographs I had never seen. Lila at 20, hair dark from a lake, holding hands with a woman whose smile was quiet and sure. The woman looked at her like she was both a discovery and a destination. The picture made a small, sudden ache in my chest. "Who?" I asked, and I kept my voice open, a room with windows. "Nora," she said, almost inaudible, "from grad school, before She closed her mouth on the initial as if it could cut her tongue. My daughter, who could freeze paper to save ink, could not keep this look from bleeding. Half sorrow, half delight remembered too late. "She left?" I asked. "We left," she said. "We were always packing, we were always saving. I chose a man who made me feel warm only in pieces because consistency started to look suspicious. I'm not good at keeping." The confession slanted sideways into self-blame. I wanted to lift it off her shoulders like a wet coat. "You're good at love," I said. "You're bad at mercy." She smiled with one corner of her mouth. "Runs in the family," she said, and we both let that be a joke and a warning. We laid the photos on a towel, and the faces thawed into focus, details clarifying as the frost let go. On the back of one, in her handwriting, July, learning to lean. I thought of the lemon onesie and how hope sometimes looks like an inventory and sometimes like a woman's hand on another woman's wrist at a lake. The light outside shifted, afternoon bleeding into its shadow. In that blue hour, the hum faltered again, as if tired of singing. Lila's head snapped toward the sound. "It's fine," she told it, like a mother talking a child back to sleep. The freezer ignored her. A low clunk. Then the sort of silence that makes you hear every other thing. The dog 2 houses over, a car door, someone laughing too loud on a sidewalk. In the mudroom, the cold felt less like winter and more like a memory. "We need dry ice," she said, the words landing like marching orders. "It's Sunday," I said. "The gas station on Cedar," she said. "They'll have it in the back." She was already reaching for her coat, her purse, the keychain knocking her sternum. I touched her sleeve. "Let me come," I said. "You'll slow me down," she said, not unkind. "You'll worry me," I said. We were both telling the truth. She hesitated, then recalculated like a person adding columns. 10 minutes there, she said. 10 back, 30 total. She wrote the time on a sticky note, stuck it to the door frame like a promise. "If I'm not back, you call—" She stopped. "No one," she said. "You call me." And then she was gone, the back door catching and releasing a sliver of cold. The house sank around me, the way it does when a person leaves and all the air has to reorganize. I stood with my hands hovering over the spread of our life. Papers like leaves, photos like windows, a onesie, like a lemon slice in a glass of water. The freezer sat there, lid closed, humming nothing. I could feel its stillness the way you feel a stopped watch. I pressed my ear to the side, the way I used to listen to walls when she was a baby, hunting for pipes and sighs. Nothing. The silence was a room with no doors. I did what women do when no one is watching. I decided. I fetched a hairdryer, an old fan, every cold pack from the kitchen freezer, a bag of peas that had seen 3 winters. I set the fan on low to keep air moving so the inside wouldn't sweat onto paper. I spread ice packs around the bags that held pills and passports. I moved letters to the shadow by the door, where the draft made a tiny current. I spoke out loud like a person half praying, half instructing the universe. Stay, hold, not yet. The house answered with the creak that means you're not alone, and also that you'll always be alone in a certain way. 10 minutes stretched into 12. I checked the clock as if checking could change it. 15. I didn't call. I wanted to honour the sticky note as if it were binding law. At 18, I texted. At 20, the dog 2 houses down barked like the ending of something. My phone lit. "Line at register," she wrote. "Guy thinks dry ice is dangerous." "It is," I typed. Deleted it. Typed, "drive safe." Deleted that. Typed nothing. Stood there with the weight of unsent words in my hand. The back door opened at 27, and relief hit like a fever breaking. Lila came in with a foam chest that looked like a cooler, but felt like a lifeboat. "Move," she said, brisk, as if talking kept the clock from winning. She pried the lid, white vapour blooming like magic. She slipped blocks of dry ice into corners, like building a fence around what she loved. "We vent, or it cracks," she murmured, lifting the freezer lid a breath and setting a spoon in the gap, her movements too practised for a first time. "Where did you learn that?" I asked. "Forums," she said. "Insomniacs who hate entropy." The sentence should have made me worry. Instead, it made me love her harder. While the dry ice sighed its cold, she took a breath for the first time in an hour. It came out ragged. "We buy a generator," she said. "We buy two." "We can't winterproof a life," I said. "Watch me," she said, and I saw the cliff again. I wanted to take her hand and steer us toward a hill, something walkable, something you can take a picnic on. "Leela," I said, and this time she heard the part of her name that is a plea. She sat on the step beside the towels and photos and put her face in her hands. "I thought if I could hold time still, it wouldn't hurt," she said, voice flat with exhaustion, "but the hurt is the only thing that moves." I touched her hair. It felt like mine did at her age, thick, a little defiant, full of old sun. "We can keep some," I said. "We can let some go." She shook her head against her fingers. "Every letting is a death," she whispered. "Every keeping is too," I said. "It's just slower." She lifted her head, and the room decided together to be quiet. "Help me do the hardest thing," she said. "Help me pick." The hardest thing is always two small things pretending to be one: mercy and faith. We started with tax docs because bureaucracy is easier than love. We scanned what bled, photographed what still held. We assigned a bin to originals that could move to the closet, to the warmth of a normal hidden place. We kept letters for the freezer in a sealed box with silica packets like talismans. We put the lemon onesie in a shadow box frame I found in the hall closet behind the wrapping paper, as if past me had prepared for this moment without knowing. Lila hung it by the window with hands that trembled like mine do when threading a needle. The lemons shone like a private ceremony. When we came to the tiny socks, she stopped. "These live in cold," she said. "For now," I said, and didn't push. We labelled "for now" with a blue star, a compromise with time. We moved the photos to an album, sleeves that made them safe without making them unreachable. I slipped the picture of her and Nora out and tucked it into a back pocket of the album that wasn't really a pocket, just a place where cardboard meets cloth. I didn't ask, I simply made space. It took the whole evening and the beginning of night. We ate toast standing up, because sitting felt like a luxury and sitting also felt dangerous. The dry ice shrank, the hum returned in a thin apology. The house remembered how to be a house. At 10, the power flickered again and held. We looked at each other and for the first time all day laughed in the same language. At midnight, we closed the lid on a freezer that now held fewer bags and more seals that made sense. Lila set the padlock on top but did not lock it. The key hung quiet, heavy and lighter at once. "I can sleep," she said, and it sounded like an experiment. We turned off the mudroom light, and the dark was the good kind, the kind shared by people who have told the truth until it tired them. Before bed, in the kitchen where the clock clicks like a patient heart, I asked the question I had folded and unfolded with my hands all day. "Who did you call when it happened?" She blinked, surprised by the shift. "No one," she said. I didn't want a voice to make it true. "Call me," I said, "from now on, for anything that knocks you off your feet. Even if I can't lift it, I can sit with you while it's heavy." She nodded, slow as Thor. "Even if it's 3 a.m, she asked. "Especially then," I said. We turned toward the hallway like people leaving a church. At the mudroom door, she paused and went back, lifted the padlock one more time and set it in the drawer beside the can opener. She looked at me with a small, stubborn smile. "I want the hum to be an appliance," she said, "not a god." "Amen," I said, and the word didn't feel foolish at all. Morning didn't arrive so much as gather, shy at first, then steady, like someone coming closer with a candle cupped in both hands. I woke to the ordinary clink of spoons, the sound of water filling a kettle, and for a second I forgot the hum, the lock, the cold museum we'd curated to keep from drowning. Then I heard it, the freezer, not as a god, but as a machine, steady as a tired choir. I lay there a moment and listened to my body relearn safety, the way a child relearns balance after a fever. When I reached the kitchen, Lila had 2 mugs lined up like witnesses. "Today we open the envelope," she said. "No preamble, no delay, the kind of resolve that counteracts 1,000 doubts." The envelope from my mother, open with Lila, sat on the table like a small trial. We didn't sit right away. We circled it, both of us pretending to clean what was already clean. She wiped the table until the wood shone. I rearranged the fruit bowl until oranges behaved like planets in a controllable sky. Finally, she slid the letter to the centre, and the house tuned itself to our hands. I broke the seal. Paper rasped. My mother's handwriting tilted forward, eager, the way she used to walk toward a bus, even when it was miles away. I read out loud because secrets are smaller when they're spoken. She wrote about a winter when her own mother, my grandmother, started tucking photographs into mason jars and sinking them into the icebox under beef and frozen peas. I was 10, my mother wrote, the kind of 10 that thinks mothers can't break. She described the day she found a jar with my grandfather's war letters, the ink already turning to a grey ghost, and how she ran outside and held the jar to the sun, as if light could reverse water. I learned 2 things, the letter said. Cold is a kind of prayer, and every prayer has a cost. She told me she married a man who preferred his prayers in cash and whiskey, how she hid her paychecks in flour canisters because banks asked questions and men punished answers. She wrote that she forgave me in advance for whatever I would try to control to make love stay. "You will have a daughter with a spine like a spar," she wrote, "and you will want to wrap her in rules. Do not let her stand in wind. Teach her where the porch light is." My throat closed. The letters blurred. Lila's hand slid across the table and steadied the page. "There's more," she said very gently. There was a confession I hadn't expected. My mother admitted to hiding a small metal tin under the loose stair in our old house, a tin she called the mercy box. Inside, she wrote, were all the things she couldn't say when anger made a storm in her mouth. Apologies, thank yous, a list of names she loved, a recipe she promised she'd teach me when we weren't poor. "If you find the tin, open it with your daughter," she wrote. "I want mercy to pass through hands, not freezers." The last line wavered where her strength had run thin. When you feel the need to lock, ask what you are trying to keep from changing. Sometimes the change is the rescue. We sat in silence that hummed differently than any machine. The stairs in this house weren't the ones from my childhood. The tin, if it was anywhere, had travelled folded inside a story for decades. "We can make our own mercy box," I said. Lila nodded, eyes still on the page like she was absorbing a language she once knew. "Not a box," she said slowly. "A place." She looked at the narrow shelf by the window where the lemon onesie glowed soft in its frame. "There," she said. "Mercy goes where light visits." We weren't done with the past. Loss doesn't like to be leapfrogged. After breakfast, she fetched the shoebox with the photos we hadn't yet sorted, the last of the bags we'd labelled "for now." The freezer's lid was closed but not locked. I could feel it watching us without malice, like a retired guard dog. We spread the photos and paper on the table again, letting sunshine do its slow work. That's when we found the envelope I didn't recognise, unmarked, thin, tucked between an insurance policy and a utility bill from 2 apartments ago. Inside were printouts of clinic records, dates and numbers, a sonogram that looked like fog pretending to be a moon. I felt an ache move through the room as if the house had ribs. Lila's hands held the paper like it was too hot and too cold. "I thought I had all of it," she whispered. "I threw some away. I thought that would Help. She didn't cry. She blinked carefully, as if tears would smudge what she needed to see. Do we keep these? I asked, because love sometimes means asking obvious questions softly. Yes, she said, surprising us both, but not in the freezer. She slid the sonogram under the lemon onesie frame, just for a moment, to see them together, the abstract and the cloth. Then she placed the papers in a clear sleeve and set them on the shelf where morning could find them. The air in. The kitchen loosened, like a tight dress unzipped one notch. At 9:30, a knock at the back door. Not timid, not pushy, a carpenter's knock. Mr. Carver stood there with a toolbox and a respectful expression. "Compressors rattling against the frame," he said by way of hello. "Sometimes a shim will hush it." I opened the door before Lila could decide whether we were accepting help today. She watched him the way a cop watches a stranger reach into a pocket. "I brought wood blocks," he said, lifting his hands like a harmless man. "And earplugs, if that's your preference." She exhaled and stepped aside. "We're trying a new thing," she told him, letting the hum be an appliance. He smiled, small and true. "Best demotions happen before the promotion goes to their head," he said, kneeling by the freezer. He worked quietly, body slanted like a prayer not meant to be overheard. I made small talk about weather because weather is the only faith we share with men we don't know well. Lila hovered, then forced herself to sit. She studied the letter again, her thumb tracing the loopy O in open with Lila. "My mother froze jars," I told him. "Some people pickle, some people preserve by winter." He nodded. "My wife keeps seeds in the fridge," he said. "Says cold makes future patient." He wedged a shim, listened, adjusted. The hum softened, lost its edge. The whole house unclenched an inch. "There," he said, pleased but not proud. "She'll do for now." He straightened, wiped his hands. "You got backup if storms cut lines?" he asked. Lila looked to me, and I looked to her, a small choreography we were just learning to dance. "We have a plan," she said, and we both believed it more than yesterday. After he left, the house felt larger, not because a man had filled it, but because fear had backed up 2 steps. We filled the new space with work that didn't feel like panic. We made the mercy place. In a shallow wooden bowl, we put objects that weren't big enough to lock us, but were heavy enough to anchor us. A bottle cap from a beach day that went right. One of her childhood barrettes shaped like a star. The stub of a pencil my mother used to write grocery lists when we had $5 and a prayer. On a note card we wrote rules in pencil. Not for freezing, not for proving, for remembering when we forget we're okay. Lunch was soup, rebellious and canned. I opened it with the can opener that had slept beside the padlock last night, and it made a sound like an old joke finding its punchline. Lila raised an eyebrow, then raised her spoon. Salt and heat made their argument in my mouth, and I let them win. After, we went for a walk because movement felt like a door we could open without a key. The sky was January thin, a pale coin a child would keep for luck. We walked past the hydrangeas and the church that had stopped tolling its bell since the pastor left. We didn't talk about men or machines. We talked about the dog 2 houses down and whether he was saying hello or singing despair. We laughed at ourselves and meant it. Back home, we faced the last thing we hadn't faced, the notebook from the garage, my ex-husband's blocky letters marching like ants, efficient and ugly. Leela set it in the middle of the table as if laying down a card. "We can burn it," she said, "or we can read it and then recycle the parts that don't deserve a second life." Her voice was steady, like a person who has learned the difference between letting go and dropping. I touched the page with one fingertip. The underlined sentence, "Don't let her handle the money," looked smaller today, like graffiti fading under rain. "He didn't know who I was," I said. "He didn't know who we are," she said. We ripped the page slowly, not in fury, not in ceremony, but in the plain way you dismantle a bad rule. We put the pieces in the bin and watched the pile transform from commandment to confetti. Late afternoons softened the edges of everything. I brewed tea because coffee is for survival and tea is for after. We sat with our mugs, and the house felt like a friend who had stayed too long and was finally ready to go home. "Nora wrote me," Lila said, staring into steam. The name hung between us, familiar and brave. This morning, out of nowhere, she said she saw a photo a friend tagged from years ago, the one at the lake. She asked if I remembered how the water didn't hurt, even when it was cold. The sentence trembled in the middle. "Do you want to answer?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe mercy belongs in messages too." She smiled faintly. "I'll think. I'll not freeze it." We both laughed a little at the new verb. Evening slid in wearing blue. I turned on the lamp that makes the room look like a small theatre where gentle things happen. The freezer hummed like a manageable thought. We took the padlock from the drawer and set it on the table. We looked at it as if it might apologise. It didn't. It just lay there, heavy and simple. "Keep it?" I asked. "For the shed," she said. "Lawnmower's been flirting with thieves in my nightmares." We both grinned at the absurd dignity of moving a lock from memory to machinery. Before bed, we stood at the mudroom door and watched the lemon onesie glow in its frame, the sonogram tucked behind it like a whisper, not quite ready for the room. "I wish," she said, and then stopped, because wishing is a private country. "Me too," I said, and it was enough. We turned off the light and listened to the ordinary night. Pipes, wind, the soft complaint of wood. In the dark I could feel my mother's letter like a small warm stone in my pocket. "Cold is a kind of prayer," she had written, "but so is light." I slept without the chair by the mudroom door. When I woke in the dark, just once, I reached out like I used to when she was small, and found the wall, the lamp, the space where my daughter was breathing in the next room. I didn't go check. I let the house keep its watch, and I let the hum be a machine, and I let myself be the person my mother trusted in ink, one who could choose mercy before the lock, light before the cold. Night fell soft and stubborn, the kind that makes every room feel like it's holding its breath. I moved through the house touching small certainties, the switch that always sticks, the nick in the counter where a glass once lost an argument. The freezer hummed like a tired good tune. I stood by the window and watched the streetlights throw their coins of gold on the road. In another life, this would have been a quiet night. In this one, it was a test I didn't yet know how to grade. Wind rose after midnight. It came in long, opinionated sentences, arguing with the gutters, finding the loose places in old wood. A branch tapped the glass like a cautious stranger. I lay awake and counted the seconds between gusts. When sleep finally took me, it took me the way a wave does, pulling hard, then letting go. I dreamed I was walking on a frozen lake with my mother and my daughter. Under the ice, photographs swam like fish. When I knelt to touch one, the ice warmed, and the fish turned into candles and kept burning under the water. I woke at 3 with the taste of smoke and snow in my mouth. I padded to the kitchen and found Lila already there, her knees tucked up, the key quiet on the table beside her mug. The lamp made a small island of light. "Couldn't sleep," she said, not apologising. "Me either," I said, not reassuring. We listened, not for the hum, not for the wind, for something else that had started to live between us, the new quiet that comes when control has loosened its fist but hasn't left the room. "Read it again," she said, nodding to the letter. I did. My mother's words moved through us like warm water, finding cold corners and making them honest. When I finished, Lila didn't speak. She went to the mudroom, opened the drawer, lifted out the padlock, and set it, finally, into a paper bag. "Shed," she said. The sound of the bag crumpling felt like a curtain closing on a bad scene without erasing the plot. At 4, the power left like a guest who doesn't say goodbye. Everything went dark and exact. The hum died mid-note. Lila didn't panic this time. She looked at me and I looked at her, and we moved. Candles, matches, flashlights, the dry ice plan we'd written in the margin. We didn't run. We acted like people who knew the choreography. She slid the spoon under the lid to vent. I gathered the 4 now bags and set them on the towel-lined table in a way that would not insult the work we'd done. Our breaths made small ghosts. Wind argued harder. Somewhere a transformer popped and a slice of the street went black. We could let it all defrost, I said, because the dark made me brave and the quiet made me honest. We could decide that cold isn't our answer anymore. My voice faltered because the sentence held more than paper and pills. She rested both hands on the lid, the way a person rests on a coffin before the first handful of dirt. "What if I'm not ready and the world doesn't wait?" she asked, calm, almost curious. "What if we tell the world we're busy," I said, "and we make it wait?" We stood there with that, the way you stand at a crosswalk when the sign says, "Stop," and your body says, "Now." Outside, the wind lifted again, then fell. In the absence of hum, I could hear the house's bones. "Take 3 things out," I said. 3 that will live somewhere warm from now on, not because cold is wrong, because light is right. She considered, and I saw her do it, peel logic from fear like a label that comes off clean. She chose the letters first, not all, just the ones with the handwriting that knew how to lean into a page. She chose the photo of her at the lake with Nora, the one that made a promise without witnesses. She chose the tiny socks, surprising herself. "Warm," she said, and laid them in the bowl we'd declared a mercy place, like you might lay a ship in a bottle. The choice was a ceremony we hadn't rehearsed but apparently knew. The power returned at 5 with a cough and a shrug. Lights flickered on like apologies. The freezer found its voice again, softer for the interruption, as if chastened. We didn't cheer or sigh. We just stood in the kitchen with candle smoke still thinking about us and decided we liked the light better. By morning, the storm had spent itself. The gutters were full of arguments the wind had lost. I made eggs with more butter than a nutritionist would approve because mercy sometimes tastes like fat. Lila ate with the appetite of someone who'd done labour you can't see. After, she opened her phone and stared at the message from Nora again, the one about cold water that didn't hurt. She typed, deleted, typed again. Her mouth tilted with a private debate. Then she put the phone down. "Later," she said, "after we take the chair from the mudroom." We carried the chair out together, the one I'd used as a guard post on the worst nights. It fought the doorway, then forgave us. We set it by the window where the light spends afternoons, and it became furniture again, not a vigil. I sat. Lila stood across from me with the key in her hand. "Do you want this?" she asked. My first instinct was to refuse, pride dressed as progress. But I held out my palm. The metal was cool, not cold. "We share it," I said. "We share the whole house." The gesture put something back in order that had taken months to scramble. We invited the past to say one more piece. We took the shoebox of photos to the porch, where winter pretends it's spring when the sun is bright. We told stories out loud, not the official ones, but the side notes. The time the cat stole a pork chop, the day the car died in the toll lane, and we learned how kind strangers can be when money is involved. We argued about dates and both won. I showed her a picture of myself at 21 that made me blush for reasons that weren't all bad. She held it up beside her own face and whistled low. "Same eyes," she said, "same stubborn." At noon, Mr. Carver returned with a different knock, confident but not claiming. He wanted to check the shim, he said, because wood has a mind when weather changes. We let him. He tightened a screw, complimented our candle choices, and made a joke about joining a neighbourhood watch that only monitors appliances. When he left, he said, "You two have it handled," in a tone that didn't mean you don't need me. It meant you know who to be. Afternoon rolled itself out like a rug. Lila wrote a short list that wasn't a manifesto. Call electrician, buy small generator, put silica packets in the letterbox, take a walk when worry gets hyper. She titled it For Light Days. I added one, laugh at least once even if the laugh is ugly. We both grinned that I'd written it ugly. Sometime between tea and twilight, I took the Mercy bowl and added an apricot stone, smoothed by 1,000 thumbs. It had lived in drawers for years without a job. For luck, I said, and for proof that sweetness leaves a shape worth keeping. Lila watched me, then pinched the padlock key off the table chain and didn't put it back around her neck. She hid it in the bowl under the socks and the bottle cap, so that Mercy would always be heavier than the lock. Evening brought peace like a dog that finally lies down after too much pacing. I cooked canned soup without apology and sliced an orange, and the house smelled like old winters when everything was easier because we were too busy to notice complexity. We ate at the counter. Lila's phone buzzed. She flinched, then smiled. "Nora?" she said, not quite steady. She wrote, "I remember. I'm in town next week. Coffee?" She looked at me like I might be the sign she'd been seeking. "Go," I said, "and if it hurts, come home." She nodded, eyes bright with the good fear that lives next door to hope. We went to the mudroom one last time before bed. The lemon onesie glowed in its frame. The sonogram's pale moon kept its counsel. The freezer hummed, obedient. We lifted the lid and looked at what remained, less than before, more than enough. We touched nothing, because not touching was the touching we needed. We closed it. We didn't lock it. That night I dreamed the lake again, but this time the ice was thin only at the edges, and that was good because edges are where things begin or end. My mother walked with me. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. She carried a tin that wasn't metal at all, but light-shaped into a container. She set it on the ice and it didn't crack. "Mercy travels," she said, and it sounded like water finding its level. Morning arrived with dishes to wash and a list to lose and find again. Lila found me by the window and kissed the top of my head, a motion that used to be mine. "I'm going to the market," she said. "We're low on fresh." I laughed because the note on the fridge once banned canned soup. Now the fridge held both, and the world didn't end. "Get lemons," I said, "even if they're out of season." She smiled. "Especially then." When the door closed, the house breathed. I walked to the Mercy place and added the can opener. Not retired, just remembered. I stood in the doorway of the mudroom and listened to the machine hum, and it sounded like what it was, a tool. I ran my hand along the lid. Not blessing, not farewell. Just a touch between equals. I don't know if we saved everything worth saving. I don't know if the freezer will live another year or if the generator will ever matter. I know the light found us and that we kept a few things warm the hard way. I know my mother was right. Cold is a kind of prayer, but mercy is a better one, and it doesn't need a lock to work.